broadcast.
The time is now 6:33 p.m. and I'll call this meeting to order. Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call, please.
Mayor Lofgren.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem. Here. Trustee Counterman. Here. Trustee Doherty. Here. Trustee Jeffrey.
Here.
Trustee Morris.
Here.
Trustee Strock. Present. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion is approved. Next item is audience business. Were there any speaker slips tonight? Seeing no audience business, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, the consent agenda. For the benefit of our audience, mine does not list a number for payment approval.
673 here.
For the benefit of the audience, the two items on tonight's consent agenda are the payment approval report in the amount of $673,759.85 and the December 3rd, 2019 minutes. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Jeffrey.
Yes.
Trustee Strock.
Yes.
Trustee Ott.
Yes.
Trustee Doherty.
Yes.
Trustee Morris.
Yes.
Mayor Lofgren.
Yes.
Trustee Counterman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda are the action items. Action item A is appointments to the Planning Commission. Clerk Blackston. I'm sorry. No, you're good. No, you're fine.
Mishaps with the formatting, so we tried to fix it. I'm sorry. We're on the appointments, right? Okay, so we need to appoint two people for the Planning Commission, and we had Kristen Copus. I don't want to say her last name wrong.
Great, yeah, Kristen Esposito and Carissa Saloa? Saloa.
So then I would ask if they had told the mayor that they were interested in applying for this position, and if you're okay with that, I'll go ahead and appoint them to that.
And I'll just point out their lack of absence tonight falls on me. I asked them if they were interested in doing this, and I failed to convey that they should probably show up for this meeting. They did both express an interest in being on it. I explained to them the purpose of it at this point is to just consider whether we should keep our planning commission, and we needed people for that purpose. So they both expressed an interest in joining and an ability to come to a meeting that was held on short notice sometime in the next week or so. So if anyone has any questions about them, I can convey the best knowledge I have about them. Trustee Jeffrey probably knows them both as well. They're both school teachers in the district.
Were there three of them?
The third was Carol Ott. I don't know if she's still,
Well, she was going to do it if one of those to change their mind, because we needed two people to do it. So she was just going to be in case one of them had changed.
Go ahead and make her appoint her as well, so that we have just a backup and make sure we have a better opportunity to have a quorum for the meeting that we need, yeah. Or even as a regular member, we have enough.
Okay, Dave says that's fine. And will Carol be fine?
It's fine.
Okay.
so
Okay.
as it stands right now, we have two people applying to actually join, and then Carol would be put on as an alternate if one of those couldn't attend.
They haven't been appointed yet.
Nope, that's what we're
doing
considering tonight.
So you would entertain a motion at this time?
Any questions about them at this time? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
I move that we appoint Kristen Esposito and Carissa Saloa to our Planning Commission and appoint Carol Ott as an alternate member.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Strock.
I'm going to vote yes. I would vote no for them not being here, but I guess they were excused, so yes.
Trustee Ott.
Yes.
Trustee Morris.
Yes.
Mayor Lofgren.
Yes.
Trustee Counterman.
I didn't have a chance to listen to these people or meet or were giving me information, so I'll just abstain for now.
Is an abstention okay, or should we have a no? Okay,
I mean,
Okay.
we can't force anybody to vote
Okay.
on a matter.
no, that's fine, I just trying to. And then trustee Jeffrey,
Yes.
trustee Doherty.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries 6-0 with one abstention. Next item on the agenda is the appointment of the town treasurer and finance director, Mr. Stamey.
Had in our budget, and we've advertised for a finance director position, and our interview team has recommended Denise Rademacher be hired for that position. And she started Monday, and she's here this evening for the board's appointment for that position. So, and there
Step
is,
forward and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
I got it.
Thanks, Denise.
Push the button. My name's Denise Rademacher. I spent about 13 years as the town treasurer with the town of Meade prior to coming here. Before that, I was the accounting manager and HR manager at the Mountain View Fire Protection District for approximately 8 years. I have a degree in finance from the University of Colorado Boulder. My family is the farming community just a little bit west of here near Firestone in the Meade area. We've been there for generations. Some of you may be familiar with the name as far as I had a brother who was a Weld County Commissioner. So that was my older brother, Doug. Another brother served on a school board for the St. Vrain Valley School District. A lot of my family's involved with public service in one way or another. I have a brother who is he's the deputy city manager for the city of Longmont, and a brother who's a chief at Mountain View Fire. So I have a lot of public service in our family, trying to carry on that tradition, and I'm excited to be here at the town of Lochbuie. I'm joining Steve, who I've worked with in the past when he was at the town of Meade, and Linda, who was also at the town of Meade. So, you know, you've got a lot of us here now, and I think we're a pretty good team, and I enjoy working with all of you.
Point. Welcome. Trustee Strack?
I'd just like to say welcome, and please don't pay for any bridges.
I wasn't aware of that, but my heart goes out to that. That is a mistake I do not ever want to be in the news for, so.
Thank you.
Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to appoint Denise Rademacher as the town treasurer.
I'll second.
A motion and a second, roll call, please.
Trustee Counterman.
Yes.
Trustee Doherty.
Yes.
Trustee Morris. Mayor Lofgren.
Yes.
Trustee Strock.
Yes.
Trustee Jeffrey.
Yes.
Trustee Ott. Okay.
The appointment goes through by a vote of 7-0. Welcome aboard. Next item is Resolution 2020-1 concerning the public meetings postings. Clerk Blackston.
Okay, we do this every year. It's statutory for us to decide or to make our posting places public. And but in 2019, there was a House bill passed that they're allowing. Let me get my little notes here. I'm sorry. I'm a little baffled. I'm not sure why tonight. That we can post on our website, so we don't, because currently we do it physically, and we used to do it at the gas station, but we just do it here now. But now you're allowed to do it on your website. Even if we do it on the website, but if for some reason our website's not working or something's down, we'll post it physically here. If there's an emergency thing, we'll get it posted physically, but this year it'll be our official posting place will be on the website for 2020, so. And we can put it on Facebook and those kind of things as well, so. But the website is the key, which is a requirement.
Other comments for Ms. Blackston? Trustee Strack?
I'm kind of a stickler for words and stuff, so on section 3 of the resolution, I would really like to take out the first 4 words that are as a courtesy only. It could simply say the town may also post. I don't think we have to tell everybody that we're doing this as a courtesy for them. I think it should be posted on the front of this building and probably more places, just to bring more people in. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
Is anyone opposed to removing that language? Okay, any other
I think
questions?
the point of that language, just because I drafted that resolution section, is just to make it clear that your legal posting place is on the website now, and you can post if you want as a
Sure.
courtesy
Sure.
on Town Hall, but it's not required, and I just want to make sure we don't get tripped up with that.
I
I think
completely
the
understand.
the word may also says the same thing, so I'm happy with taking that language out. I just want to make sure you understand that if the town hall didn't have a posting, it doesn't make the meeting not legit.
Certainly, I understand that. I just don't think those 4 words are necessary. So.
Any other questions or comments? Have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2020-1, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Lockbowie designating the official posting place for public notice of public meetings of the Town of Lockbowie for the year 2020, with the amendment of taking out the first 4 words in section 3.
Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Morris.
Yes. Yes.
Trustee Counterman. Yes. Trustee Ott. Trustee Doherty. Yes. Trustee Strock.
Yes.
Trustee Jeffrey.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Yeah. Oh,
I have it in there. You're not required to do, you certainly can, but I just put it as you don't mention.
Okay,
that's just for her to sign, right? Yeah.
okay, that's fine. I know sometimes we do it publicly, so that's why I was curious. Okay.
my previous employments, but it's fine that it's, like, we don't do it.
Okay, we're good. Next.
Next item is action item D, ordinance 2019-648.
2020 is numbered on the
Packet,
packet.
it's 2020.
Yeah.
Ordinance
You're good.
2020-648 extends the currently in existence moratorium that the town has on acceptance, process, and approval of land use applications related to oil and gas. As you know, you previously took action to impose a moratorium that would last until February 20th. Tonight, we're going to have a first study session on new oil and gas regulations, and anticipating that maybe possibly because it's a relatively complicated subject, you might want to have further discussion and then push decision-making until early February. We thought it was wise to go ahead and extend the moratorium to March 31st to give us the 30-day period after you adopt the new regulations before they would go into effect.
Questions or comments on the moratorium at this time? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Move to approve ordinance number 2020-648, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Lockbowie, Colorado, extending the moratorium on acceptance, processing, and approval of land use applications and any other requests for approval to conduct oil and gas exploration, extraction, or development within the town limits.
Second.
A motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Strock.
Yes.
Trustee Morris.
Yes.
Trustee Jeffrey.
Yes.
Trustee Ott. Mayor Lofgren.
Yes.
Trustee Doherty. Yes. Thank you.
And the motion carries 7-0. Our moratorium is extended to March 31st of 2020. Next item on the agenda is action item E, the frontage road roundabout contract award. Yay! Mr. Stamey.
Thank you, Mayor. So the town did advertise, did receive, and did open bids for the County Road 2 roundabout project. And those bids were reviewed by our engineering representative, Martin & Martin. John Eddy is here this evening as well to present that project. We did submit those bids and the apparent low bidder information to CDOT, who also reviewed everything. Concurred with the award of the contract to Duran Excavating, and that is your action tonight in the amount of the $2,451,152.70. And so we'll do that tonight. The related item, we have the next item, task order to formalize Martin & Martin's role as the construction administrator. And the next step in this project after your approval will be for us to give a notice of start of the project to Duran Excavating, and they will have 180 days in the contract for that project. So we'll have to work with Duran on when we issue that notice of award and notice of start. So, John, would you want to send any information?
Good evening. I'm John Eddy with Martin Consulting Engineers, and I run the transportation program. And we assisted the town. We did not do the design. I want to make it very clear. We did not do the design, but there was a partnership with JVA Consulting who did the design of this project. And our role has really been just to assist the bidding process. And then once the bidding completed, to ensure that all the steps necessary to obtain CDOT's concurrence were completed successfully. I don't want to repeat too much that Steve said, but I think one thing that's important to note here is you got 6 bidders on this project, and that speaks to a very competitive bidding environment. And there's a lot of jurisdictions and even CDOT and the feds that often don't see many more than 3 bidders for projects, and that's just kind of the economic environment we're in. But so we were very pleased that we were able to market the upcoming project and get the response that we did. And our job after that was to do a thorough review on the bids and make sure that there wasn't any imbalance, anything that would make the successful bidder what we would refer to as unrestricted. And that certainly wasn't the case. We had to produce all the necessary paperwork. DBE goals were being met for CDOT. That entire package, I believe that you all have a copy of that. And that entire packet was submitted to CDOT, and they graciously turned around to respond. Now transfers to your decision. Your approval. Executing a contract with Duran Excavating, and then beginning the next step, which would be provide them with a notice to proceed, which would essentially start the time count for the project.
Questions or comments? Trustee Morris?
Thank you. I wonder if you could shed a little bit more light on something that's in Article 5, the time of completion. It's of the construction agreement. It says the contractor agrees to, quote, substantially complete all work, 180 days, et cetera, et cetera. Can you elaborate a little bit on that substantially complete, what that means? How do we define that?
Substantially complete is basically the delivery of all the bid items. It doesn't mean that there aren't any more inspections. And if you've been in the construction world, we refer to we use the term punch list, and that's something that we do on a project. And often what happens is when a contractor requests and says we're ready for a punch list review, they're essentially saying that they have substantially completed the project. And again, it doesn't mean that we won't find something, that they'll still be responsible for coming back and mitigating.
Okay. Does the contractor declare substantially complete, or do you guys, your management administration?
Our role as the construction administrator would be to make a recommendation to the town that the project has met substantial completion.
I kind of looked through the contract, and it doesn't really spit out everything. So I guess my question is, a few weeks ago, we saw some revisions that were made to the roundabout and stuff. And so I've always considered the plans as a contract document. And so I'm just asking, is that the way you see it? And when we saw the other plans and things that have been omitted, we're still going with that picture. Is that pretty much it?
Yes, I would agree with what you're saying. We consider the plans and specifications a part of the entire contract package.
Thank you.
Anyone else? And then I guess my question would be for Steve or for you, in terms of coordinating between Asphalt Specialties and Duran, where these two meet, are we gonna be able to do that so that the timing works and that we don't run into any conflicts? And who's gonna be in charge of monitoring that? Is that you guys, or will that be something that's on our town staff?
It'll be a combination of all of us, as well as our construction administrator on the County Road 2 project itself, and coordination with Asphalt Specialties and this contractor. It'll be a task. Everybody's going to have to work on to make it work.
And if I may add, I would just add that the specification language requires a coordination effort between contractors that abut one another. And they can't just make a decision that would disrupt another project, disrupt traffic. And often that requires that, any plan to begin work or have some specific activity occur is shared with the town and approval is received before that activity starts. Yeah.
Anyone else? I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the frontage road / county road 2 roundabout award contract with the May meeting for $2,451,155. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Jeffrey.
Yes.
Trustee Doherty.
Yes.
Trustee Strack.
Yes.
Mayor Lofgren.
Yes.
Trustee Counterman. Trustee Ott. Trustee Morris.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Next item is the related task order with Martin Martin for construction administration. I assume at this point trustee Doherty is going to recuse from any consideration of this item. Any questions on this item before we move to a motion? I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the task order with Martin and Martin for construction administration of the frontage road / county road 2 roundabout in the amount of $155,000.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Morris.
Yes.
Mayor Lofgren.
Yes.
Trustee Strack.
No.
My thing's not working. Trustee Counterman.
Yes.
Trustee Ott.
Yes.
And Trustee Jeffrey.
Yes.
So by a vote of 5-1 with one recusing, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is action item G, the IGA with Kingsburg for Police Services. Mr. Thamey?
Well, the chief is not here tonight, but this reflects renewal of the contract for police services we have in the town of Keensburg. This represents a 6% increase over what we've done. Monthly amount on Exhibit A, $1,164 per month. It's an annual contract of $97,977.
Questions or comments? Trustee Morris?
Question, but it may be better suited for when the chief is here, but maybe Mr. Stamey could answer it. In paragraph A, the service level of Exhibit A, we're going to provide an average of 26 hours per week of service in Keensburg, and then there's language about if there's an investigation or an event or something that requires more than that, that the town manager would adjust, the chief with the town manager would adjust other patrol hours to avoid charges greater than 26. Can you clarify that for me?
That's
Maybe I'm not.
Well, that's adjusting the service hours in Keensburg, not here, but it's in Keensburg.
So would that be within the same month, or, for example, if there's a big investigation that takes 40 hours a week for a couple of weeks?
It probably depends. If it overlaps, I think they would adjust that over a period of time to make it work, keep the service, but adjust that over a period of time.
And I think the contract in section C really allows for a true-up at the end of the year.
Correct.
So that if more hours are actually provided beyond the 1352, Keensburg would owe the town for that. And the town would otherwise credit Keensburg if, for some reason, it was less.
So it would be reconciled if necessary throughout the year, and then the final settling at the end. I just want to make sure that we're not depriving of our own town of police services to adjust to that. And then likewise, that we're not meeting our end of the contract with Keensburg by stopping police services out there. But thank you for clarifying, Steve. That's all I had.
Trustee Jeffrey?
So you indicated 6% change. Is that like a COLA raise in salary for the police officer, or are they increasing their number of hours by 6%?
6% increase in the town's fee.
In the fee, so not their hours haven't changed. Okay, thank you.
That probably reflects the raises we gave our officers, right?
Raises and then operational costs as well.
Is mileage part of the hours?
I don't believe so. Time of somebody driving between here and Keysburg, I'm not sure. I would need to ask Chief that.
I would imagine it should be. Because otherwise we wouldn't be doing that. So,
Yeah,
I think it should be included.
and I can't answer that tonight.
I have a sort of related question. Do we have an IGA for the SRO coming forward soon too? Or does that go by the school districts here?
Let me report back on the status of that when that renews. I think
I think that
a-
renews in August,
I think that's-
off my memory.
I mean, because
Now that I asked that, I think so too. Okay. Any other questions or comments? I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the intergovernmental agreement between the town of Lochbuie and the town of Keensburg for police service. $8,165.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Can I ask for a friendly amendment to that motion? Because it's actually the town of Keensburg paying the town of Lochbuie, and in some months, when the hours are in excess of the contracted 4 hours, you actually may be getting more revenue than that, so you don't want to limit that motion to that. I think it's, just as presented would be, yeah.
As with the amended motion, do I have a second?
Yes, I second.
Amended motion and a second for the amended motion to approve as presented. Roll call, please.
Trustee Jeffrey.
Yes.
Yes.
Trustee Ott. Mayor Lofgren.
Yes.
Trustee Counterman.
Yeah.
Trustee Strock.
Yes.
Trustee Morris.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Next item is action item H, the approval of the grading agreement with LOB LLC.
Not an expert on grading, but I will tell you that as part of the Silver Peaks East plat that we approved in December, one of the conditions of approval was that there would be an agreement reached between the town, between LOB, which is the corporate entity that Michael Blumenthal represents, and between the Berkshire HOA for grading of a small portion of the Berkshire Park, really just to, as I understand it, even out the grade between the new development in Silver Peaks East and the Berkshire Park. There's no representatives here tonight on that, but this agreement basically grants, it recognizes, A, that the town is the owner of this park, not the Berkshire HOA, so we made some changes to the agreement to properly reflect that. Frankly, I don't think the HOA necessarily even needs to sign this agreement because the HOA doesn't manage the parks. We do, but I'm fine with the HOA signing it so that the HOA is certainly on notice that this regrading process is going to happen. This is really just a temporary access and an agreement to allow them to change the grade in that one corner of the park. There's an exhibit on the back page of the agreement that shows you that particular corner that we're talking about. Shows all kinds of topographic lines that I can't really explain to you. But I had talked with Mark Thornborough from Martin Martin, who looked this over on the town's behalf, and he was comfortable with it.
Questions or comments? Trustee Strack?
You know, it's really hard to see this little thing. And even when you blow it up on the computer, it's still pretty hard to tell. I'm also wondering if this amendment includes this intersection where they're changing the radius of that curve.
I don't believe so. It's just grading in that corner that's, that
I
rectangle.
saw it where it was red, so it's not that intersection, or had we
No,
already approved
all they're doing
that?
is grading dirt within the park.
It is just the is just a clouded region on their plan, which is there in red on the right.
All right. That's enough. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the temporary easement grading agreement between the Berkshire Homeowners Association, LOB LLC, a Colorado LLC, and the town of Lochbuie, Colorado, a statutory town in Weld and Adams County, state of Colorado, as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Strach.
Yes.
Trustee Jeffrey.
Yes.
Mayor Lofgren.
Yes.
Trustee Counterman.
Yes.
Trustee Ott.
Aye.
Trustee Doherty.
Yes.
And the motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda is the discussion items. First discussion item is ordinance 2020-649. Mr. Sura, who is not in here. Oh, yeah, there he is. It's like he was out there.
Is it okay if I sit here?
Yep.
For this presentation?
Yep, yep.
But I will have to. Thank you for having me here and for allowing me to work on this issue. I do want to just give a brief introduction to the issue, go through some of the highlights of what is being proposed as a new oil and gas regulations in your development code, and then answer any questions that you have. First, the oil and gas basin that we live in is there's a lot of development going on. About 30,000, actually 25,000 active wells within the greater Wattenberg field, which is that blob that you see up there. Every one of those red dots is one or more gas wells. And as you get a little bit closer, we know that there's been a lot of development over the last 5 to 6 years. And Brighton, Lochbuie area in August of 2014. And this is the way that it looks at the Colorado Gas Conservation Commission in August of 2019, just 5 short years. The colors that you're looking at, again, those red dots are those vertical wells, historic oil and gas wells. Typically, some of them have been plugged and abandoned. But all the new wells are those stripes that you see. And that indicates a horizontal well bore. Typically, they're drilling in this area around 7,000 feet below the surface. When they get to the Niobrara or Codell formation, they turn that well bore horizontally and then drill 1 to 3 miles. And that's why you're seeing those lines indicating where that well bore goes. The colors indicate what the status of the well. The purple being those that have been drilled, the green that have been approved by the Colorado Gas Conservation Commission but have not yet been drilled, and then light blue are those that are pending with the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. To get a little closer, in Lochbuie, you can see that central Lochbuie has not been drilled. For the most part, there has been, as you remember, over the last year and a half to 2 years, some development within Lochbuie town limits in the northern area there, and that's Crestone Peak Resources that you approved within the last 18 months. And again, getting a little bit closer, this is an area that has not been developed, kind of the core central part of Lochbuie. This is the kind of oil and gas development we're seeing. It's no longer just a lone pump jack, it's multi-well industrial development. And typically there's going to be in a typical development, there's going to be some storage of oil on site, and those are the tank batteries that you see here. And there's always emission control units, burners, that control and burn some of those emissions that come from oil and gas development. There's going to be a separator as well as other production equipment on site. And with multiple wells come multiple units for all of that. Oil and gas is regulated, of course, by Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, specifically the Air Quality Control Commission, but also more and more by local governments like yourselves. Senate Bill 181 was designed to do just that, to regulate the oil and gas industry. It also required the Colorado Gas Conservation Commission to prioritize public health, safety, and welfare. But the most important part for our discussion is it gave local governments clear regulatory authority over oil and gas and ended state preemption, or the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission's preemption of your authority to regulate oil and gas. Essentially, your regulations can be more stringent than the states at this point. And to give you just a little bit more color on this issue of Senate Bill 181 and your authority, the regulation of citing of surface impacts is clearly called out, including your zoning authority. Again, I mentioned it ends the state preemption. Determining the location of those is obviously part of that zoning authority. Mitigation of impacts going into specifically and only surface impacts of the oil and gas industry. Looking at financial issues, whether you want to have some sort of permit fee or there's going to be an inspection fee, certainly road impact fees, all of those are within your purview, and the power to enforce your regulations. Again, one of the limitations that was put into Senate Bill 181 is that your regulations, as the state's regulations, must be reasonable and necessary. What does that mean? Well, the courts haven't decided yet. I believe that reasonable and necessary gives you a lot of discretion to do what is important, and the regulations that I've put before you, I believe, are both reasonable and necessary. Just recently, Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment put forward a study that they're calling the Human Health Risk Assessment for oil and gas development. And this is a study that's been a long time coming. They've been sampling, doing air quality samples, both in Weld County and in Garfield County on the western slope since 2014. Specifically, they did a lot of that air sampling throughout 2014 and 2015. And they evaluated, that and analyzed that for different pollutants that might come from oil and gas development. And initially, in 2017, they said, look, it looks as though these are pretty clean samples that we received. And over 8-hour period, we're not really seeing enough that would cause long-term health implications. However, they did some modeling. And over the last year, and was just released within the last 2 months now, they found that there were some spikes that could cause acute health impacts. The kind of acute health impacts that we've actually been hearing about from a lot of people who live near oil and gas development. And that includes exacerbating asthma, nosebleeds, headaches, short term, but certainly problematic for those who are experiencing them. And they believe that that would be due to high amounts of benzene, ethyl benzene, and those types of oil and gas pollutants that are naturally occurring in oil and gas development. So the Colorado Gas Conservation Commission came out with a press conference with Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment and announced that they were going to take this very seriously. That in fact, because of the modeling, showed that there could be an impact as far as 2,000 feet away from homes, that they were going to take a second look at all proposed locations within 2,000 feet of a home to make sure that they're using best management practices and avoiding some of those impacts that were modeled by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment study. They're also going to be doing some initial research. They're taking sampling right now, and over the next 6 months. They recently actually did some sampling outside of an elementary school in Greeley and found that there was at least one episode of high benzene that they detected. And they're going to use that new research to inform their rulemaking required by Senate Bill 181 at the Colorado Gas Conservation Commission. Feel free to interrupt at any time or ask me any questions. I'm happy to take that. But I'd like to just move now to Lac Bowie's regulations. Currently, in section 19.7.300 in the Land Development Code is where oil and gas development is regulated. We allow oil and gas development in all zone districts. It is done through a special use permit. $1,000 bond required, and the operator must have at least $1 million worth of insurance, and the setbacks are as required by the Colorado Gas Conservation Commission. Current setbacks at the Colorado Gas Conservation Commission are 500 feet from a home, also 1,000 feet from a school or a school property or a hospital. That's called a high occupancy building unit under COGC parlance. The decision is yours. It's made, it goes directly to the Board of Trustees. I decided that I would just start fresh with the regulations because I think that with this brand new authority really comes the ability to take a different approach with the way that oil and gas is regulated at the local level. And so that's what I've proposed. It's a brand new process that really emphasizes a pre-application process, frankly. And that pre-application process is an opportunity for the staff to sit down with an applicant and what are you trying to accomplish here? What are all the values that we have, the current land uses in that immediate area of the proposed industrial oil and gas development? I mean, let's face it, it's heavy industrial use of property, and typically we don't allow that, near residences. We typically require it to be industrial land use to be in an industrial zoned area. This is a bit different in that oil and gas occurs where the oil and gas lays, where it is in the rock, in the geologic formation. And so there has to be, if there's going to be oil and gas development, there has to be some give and take to allow for them to have some flexibility, but not flexibility at the expense of public health, safety, and welfare. So the kind of questions that they'll be asking are, found in section 19.7.325. What are some of the values? What does a comprehensive plan say? Where is it? Are there any streams nearby? Are there any public water supply wells that are in the area? Are there any wetlands? Are there any wildlife issues, parks? All those types of questions and those values we'll look at first. And then, are there any alternative locations? Is this the best location, or is this just a convenient location? And having that discussion with the operator is something that, frankly, we've never been able to do before. Typically, the way that an operator would come in is say, look, I've already gone to the Colorado Gas Conservation Commission. I have my permit from the state. You more or less have to just abide by what has already been decided by the state. And that's no longer the case. So that is really important. And then, of course, there's going to be an application submittal if they find an appropriate location and get what I would consider a green light, or at least a yellow light from the staff. And they go into a review for completeness. Then there's referral comments that come through. Staff is going to also comment. The applicants are going to go back and forth, and that might take a little while. Ultimately, it goes to a staff proposal, whether they suggest that it's approved or denied, and it goes to the board for a hearing, a public hearing. So the location, you do have discretion, and I have put forward a proposal that really mirrors one of the counties that you're in, Adams County's current regulations. They were the first local government to put forward land use regulations for oil and gas using this new authority from Senate Bill 181. And what I've proposed is exact mirror of what their requirements are. I think that you're justified in doing that, both because they are good protections and still allow for some oil and gas development, but also if you were not to at least go as far as the county in which you reside, it would be perverse outcome to have a municipality, a town in this case, be a magnet for oil and gas development outside of the county moving into a municipality. That just doesn't make sense. Municipalities are where we work, where we have our homes, our businesses, our places of worship, our schools. You know, there are a lot of open spaces in the county where it's far more appropriate to have oil and gas development. So the proposal is that it needs to be outside of residentially zoned areas and needs to be at least 1,000 feet from homes, specifically 1,000 feet from a residential lot.
That's a good question. So on your comments about the county, I think I can guess the answer to this, but Weld, I assume, is taking no action, maybe even making it easier than it had been before?
The position that Weld County has taken is ever evolving. They have set up their own kind of replica of the Colorado Gas Conservation Commission process. And the position that the county commissioners have taken thus far is that they approve and endorse the current Colorado Gas Conservation Commission regulations and believe that that should be the only regulations that are permitted within Weld County, and have in some ways said, you know, dared the Colorado Gas Conservation Commission to try to go beyond those. The state is clearly has the authority to go beyond their current regulations. There is both going to be a state permit required and a local permit, and so the state really is a floor. What the state does is going to be a floor to regulations, and the local governments can go beyond that floor. A local government can't go below it.
Okay. Yeah, I guess what I was just trying to figure out is kind of going off what you were saying about not being a magnet. If we were to adopt sort of what you're proposing, in terms of Weld County, we would actually be pushing them back out into the county rather than in. Okay. Thank you.
While we're right at this point, are you saying that part of this, we should have an alternate site analysis as part of this system?
Yeah, I am, and that's triggered by that pre-application process.
Okay.
So before they put pen to paper, hopefully before they even have got a surface use agreement, you know, and have negotiated that with surface owners, they come in and talk to the staff in a confidential manner where we roll up our sleeves and try to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish. Figure out if there's a way to do it without harming certainly any of the both current and future land uses that are planned for the town of Lac Bowie. And certainly we don't want to harm future and current landowners and residents. So with that in mind, I think that oftentimes we are able to find good solutions that are going to be able to work. I think Crestone Peak Resources locations, while I don't know that everybody in this room was excited about those, I do believe that they, at the end of the day, were some reasonable locations, and I think were, as I understand it, drilled responsibly thus far and are operated responsibly. Whether there are additional locations like that within the town of Lac Bowie, I don't even want to guess. And until we have an application pending with the town of Lac Bowie, I think that, you know, we wouldn't want to speculate. Sure. So there also in the county regulations allows for a waiver. If they can prove that they're going to be truly adversely harmed by a regulation, specifically the zoning or the setback, they can ask for a waiver of that. But they have to have a showing that indeed that it's unfair and that public health, safety, and welfare is not going to be compromised in any way by allowing it to go forward. So again, looking back at sections 35 and 36, that's from Weld County assessor's site, and in town of Lac Bowie, city town limits that are within Weld County are highlighted there in kind of a pink, reddish color. But it also puts forward all of the lot lines, the residentially platted lots And this would be a setback from those residentially platted lots as well, not just homes that are currently existing. Again, that is what the decision was in Adams County. I think that there's a reason to do that. Certainly people who have planned neighborhoods in Lochbuie for the last 10 years, 5 years, have an expectation that they're going to, have an area that is going to be residential. And requiring or allowing for the oil and gas development to change the nature of that area or immediately adjacent to it to something that's heavy industrial changes the value of their property and their expectations. It also could change, the way that you see future land use. You've got a land use plan, and there are ways that any municipality is going to plan for their future growth, and there hasn't been a lot of oil and gas development put in high priority in that land use plan. So moving on to mitigation of impacts, Town of Lochbuie should continue to do this, what they've been doing, asking for best management practices if and when oil and gas development comes to Lochbuie. And we have been negotiating for these best management practices, both with Crestone Peak Resources in both their locations, and have, received some of the best management practices that have been found in the state as a result. Because the industry has voluntarily agreed to doing that, it's clearly a reasonable request, and I believe it's necessary. So also financial issues can be addressed and should be. I'm proposing an application fee of $10,000, cost reimbursement agreement, which is already currently in place, higher insurance requirements, financial assurance in the event that they go bankrupt, and it falls on the local government to plug and abandon or clean up that location, inspection fees and road improvement and maintenance agreements. And getting into the best management practices, again, these are some of the things that you've already seen because they were in previous operator agreements that came before you with Crestone Peak Resources. These are, air quality is one that we're all experiencing because we live in an area that is in non-attainment with federal air quality standards for ozone. And so ensuring that they're not causing any additional problems to our regional air quality, but also probably far more important to those localized air quality issues that I mentioned. Somebody immediately downwind of an oil and gas location should not be have any health impacts, whether they be long or short term. And some of the best management practices listed here and in that best management practice guidance would ensure or certainly minimize the risk to residents. Water quality is of utmost importance to the town of Lochbuie. You are dependent on the shallow public water supply wells like the town of the city of Brighton is. And the best way to protect those is to look at land use issues and make sure that there aren't polluting industries, that a spill, wouldn't cause a concern for your water supply. And the best way to do that is to get those away from those public water supply wells. And also to do some monitoring. And that's not something that is currently required by the state, but would be required under these new regulations. Also banning certain chemicals that are known to cause some concerns. This is a list that has been in, that we've already used in previous agreements with Crestone Peak Resources. Requiring closed loop pitless systems, containment berms. Again, these are just best management practices that are currently not required by the state, but would be required through these new regulations and best management practices. Use of pipelines is probably the best mitigation measure that you can come up with, other than moving it away from areas that you're trying to protect or from values you're trying to protect. if it has to go someplace, the very best thing you can do is require pipelines. And that's for a number of reasons. First and foremost, it eliminates truck traffic. Truck traffic is something that you're going to experience when they're doing the oil and gas development. But then the 20 to 30 years while it's in production, if you've got that oil being hauled off through a pipeline, all of that oil truck traffic is gone. That's less traffic on the roads, less inconvenience, and certainly there's air quality issues as well. I'd also say that it's safer to use a pipeline. There are less spills, and it's far better for air quality. One of the biggest times for emissions, the biggest emission source, frankly, from any oil and gas development is the tanks. These tanks are required to breathe. They can't put new fluid into a tank, a closed tank, without having some of that air get compressed. As fluid goes in, the air needs to escape, and that air is going to be laden with volatile organic compounds and benzene and things like that you don't want to be breathing, and you certainly don't want to be going into the atmosphere. So pipelines are a great requirement that we would be pushing. If not, right now it's not. It's written to make the bar very, very high for them to prove that they can't do a pipeline for that to be an oil and gas development to go forward without one. We could also just go forward and just flat out require it. There are pipelines, as we know. We've been through that process quite a few times. There are pipelines in the area. To just flat out require pipelines for oil. Noise mitigation, Commonwealth Gas Conservation Commission allows up to 80 decibels, which is, it's like a vacuum cleaner or a garbage disposal, having your head next to a garbage disposal. It can be harmful to hearing at about 80 decibels. So we wouldn't allow that. Again, this is a municipality. There's an expectation that you're not going to have industrial level noise unless you've got an industrial zone, and you don't. And any place it goes is going to have residential or commercial uses nearby, and we want to make sure that those uses are protected, and so not allowing any industrial level noise. Again, traffic control plan, traffic is going to be a big issue, and the best mitigation for that is pipelines. Visual mitigation, again, pipelines are great for that because you don't have that tank battery out there. Pipelines eliminate those tanks entirely or nearly entirely. There may be one or two tanks that are associated with, when they've got increased production or they have a problem with the pipeline, they want to have an emergency place to put that oil. But typically, if there's a pipeline, those tanks are not used if they're on site. Also, want to limit the uses of pump jacks. Pump jacks are unsightly. Crestone Peak Resources was willing to go without pump jacks. Community outreach, ensuring that they are communicating with their different, when they're getting into different aspects of the oil and gas development, when they're going from, say, drilling to completion or completion, fracking, to putting it into production. I think the community benefits from knowing what's going on, and honestly, I think that I'd like them, or what's proposed is for them to come to you at least twice that first year when they're doing that oil and gas development, just to give you an update as to how things are going and how they've responded to complaints. And then final reclamation plan, we want to make sure that they do it right and leave it, clean up their mess. So that's the end of the presentation.
Questions or comments, and if you have any that are specifically of a legal nature, we are going to have an executive session here in a couple minutes, but general questions, floor is open. Trustee Counterman?
Excuse my ignorance on this, but who checks the noise mitigation, chemical storage, and disclosure? Who inspects that?
who inspects all of these different areas to make sure that they're in compliance?
That is an excellent question and not ignorant at all, because all local governments are trying to figure that out right now. So obviously, you don't have enough oil and gas development within the town of Lochbuie to justify having a full-time or even a part-time inspector. But sharing an inspector with Adams County would be my recommendation, because they are going to have 2 to 3 inspectors who are already out there. Again, you're not entirely in Adams County. There's only a portion of Lochbuie that is in Adams County. But if you had an IGA, an intergovernmental agreement, which you just signed a bunch of tonight with Adams County, I think that you could have them inspect a location, even if it was just outside of Adams County. And the cost to you would be something that would be far less than having your own inspector. And those inspectors would be certified, they'd be trained, and they would be equipped with the kind of meters that you would need, both a noise meter and also an infrared camera, as an example, to be able to find those leaks when they go to those locations. You would also have the ability to charge the operator for those inspections. We've currently required them, Crestone Peak Resources has agreed to some fee for inspections. We haven't taken them up on that, but if, this would be an opportunity to do that, to actually have it in code, that those inspections were going to happen, and the regulated entity, the operator, was going to pay for it.
It hasn't been happening, though. It's going to happen, correct?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Are there other industries that we have that have, I guess, zoning exceptions like that we provide to oil and gas?
Not that I'm aware of, and
I guess I don't understand why they're special, honestly. I mean, there's no other industrial company out there that we would be providing exceptions. Like the way that you had it written is it's restricted outside of residential zones, right? So that means commercial, basically anything that's non-residential. Whereas any other industrial manufacturing plant that came to Lochbuie would have to go to an industrial zone, not to a non-residential zone. So I guess I guess I just don't understand why this particular industry is treated differently and special compared to every other industry that would come to build in the town of Lochbuie. I think they should be just another industry. They are just another industry. We have commercial buildings that need to go in commercial zones, and we have industrial buildings that need to go in industrial zones. Honestly, I think that's what we should be doing. I mean, again, I don't really understand and I guess you kind of mentioned a little bit because they have to be where the oil and gas is, but I think from what one of your diagrams showed, they have pretty reasonable ability to get to a lot of spaces from way over here by not drilling here, but drilling way over there and then going horizontally. So I get what you're saying to an extent, but I guess they don't have to be right over the oil and gas to get to the oil and gas, as they have proven to do themselves. So I just don't understand that. Like, we don't give those type of exceptions to any other industry, and I just don't understand why they would be any different.
Well, one of the areas that we're proposing allowing oil and gas development, and again, all that can change, and you can require it to be in an industrial area, and that's a decision you all can make, and be happy to make that change. But agricultural areas is traditional oil and gas country as well, and there's been certainly, if you look in Adams County, even Weld County, there's not enough industrial areas and not appropriately sited to allow for oil and gas development at the level that has occurred anywhere in Colorado. There's just, industrial is pretty rare zoning, and even more rare in a county. So agricultural, open space, those types of land uses, you know, are generally thought to be compatible with oil and gas development, but that's in the eye of the beholder.
I guess like even then, I mean, there's other industries that are industrial that have built in the county that if it's a residentially zoned area or it's an agriculturally zoned area, do they not just go through the process to work on getting that zone differently? I mean, let's, I don't know some good examples, but I'd say like a power plant. There's definitely power plants that are out in the middle of it. What I'm assuming were probably at one point an agriculturally zoned area. And I don't think it probably is any longer considered agricultural. I'm guessing it got rezoned to be industrial. And so they went through that process to get it rezoned to fit their use. And just like if I was in the town of Lochbuie and this is currently zoned as commercial and I want to build a house on it, I go through the process to get it rezoned as residential. And maybe that gets approved and maybe it doesn't. But again, there's a process to allow for that with every other industry out there that, you know, if it's not zoned industrial and they want it to be industrial, that it goes through that review process to get it switched to that zoning, and then it's allowed.
There's no reason you couldn't do that here. You could have a two-step process where first they would need to apply for a zoning change because there's not adequate industrial zones within the town of Lochbuie. Once they get that approved, if it gets approved, then they could go forward to the next step and actually getting an oil and gas application for that location. But it would have to be a two-step process. It might, you know, the way that it probably would come to you, it might be two different ordinances on the same night. It might not be that vastly different from what has been proposed.
That's fine, but again, I guess I'm trying to get it to be more in line with every other industry, every other business. You know, B&C Steel or whatever, that's a steel fabricator, that's high industrial, that wants to come into the town of Lochbuie to fabricate steel, they would have to go through these same processes that we would be expecting them. And I think that's what we should do. They're not special, they're not different, they're just another industry. They should be treated the same as everybody else. And that's where I think we should go. I mean, like I said, if a steel manufacturer wants to come and start fabricating steel in the town of Lochbuie, and there's not a good industrial spot for them, and they want to switch this spot to industrial, then they go through that process, just like anybody else. So personally, that's where I think we should go to is they're just another business. They're another industry, just like, you know, the new 7-Eleven that might be going in that we're working on, that they go through the process that everybody else goes through. And it's no different for 7-Eleven because they're 7-Eleven.
I just want to make sure that we are sort of framing this conversation because what Doherty's suggesting is under the new regulations that are new statewide scheme, an allowable change, correct? And it makes sense, but it effectively, I believe, would preclude oil and gas development within the town, except maybe up near the sewer and treatment plant. And I say that because we're going to be pretty loath to rezone something industrial, knowing that it can also result in a steel manufacturer coming in, right?
Say that again?
I mean, the town may be hesitant to rezone something industrial because when you rezone it industrial, it could be a steel manufacturer decides to come in and build a steel plant there, right? I mean, all the uses that are otherwise allowed, whatever they are, in our industrial zoning would be allowed then once it was rezoned to industrial. And that's fine, but I want to make sure that we all sort of understand what is the tension here, right? Because oil and gas development, we're trying to regulate noise and smell and sound and all these sort of negative nuisance impacts. Are there any upsides, I guess? I just want to make sure that the board in having that conversation understands what you're exchanging that for.
It's also important to note that, and I'm sorry that I don't have that right in front of me, but when you're doing a change in zoning, typically you need to look at your comp plan and determine if that's, the direction that you thought you were heading. And if it's inconsistent with your comp plan or it's going to be incompatible with adjacent zoning,
Appropriate.
appropriate, but it may just be an outright ban by another name, you know, so that's something that you need to consider.
And I guess that, my question is an outright ban under this new state scheme allowable?
Broomfield's
also-
testing it,
Got
aren't
a
they?
question
That's an
we'll talk
executive
about in
question.
executive session.
Yeah, I think that, you know, that there are a lot of local governments that are looking at that. In fact, there's a public discussion about that in Boulder County right now, where the county commissioners are directing their staff to try to figure out if that's allowable under 181.
Talk about that in a few minutes then.
Sure.
Trustee Strack?
I have quite a few questions here. I'll start with the noise that we had talked about. I had a citizen that lives by the Spear Canal say that the oil, when they were doing the oil rig over in Brighton across the 2, his house was shaking. When I open up my back door at night, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, past the sand pad, the project on County Road 6 is just rumbling. I mean, most people are in bed and don't realize that. So I'd like that, just to make that comment. As far as the lighting goes, I would like it to say something that any light that is visible to the public should be downlighting. And I've noticed a lot of their facilities now, they are going to downlights on their buildings and stuff, especially out at Colorado Boulevard and County Road 6, where they have a huge site. After that, I want to also say that, you know, are you aware that the oil companies are exempt from emission control for the first 3 months? So for the first 3 months that they're digging and turning up all that dust and all the pollutants, they're way past their acceptable levels. And so
It's not actually, that was dealt with just recently through the Air Quality Control Commission last month. I was involved in that rulemaking, and that exemption that you're discussing has been, or that loophole has been closed.
Oh, that'd be great then. Okay, so from there, containment berms, you know, I've seen some of the sites that have put up 20-foot berms around the projects and have left them there, which is kind of nice because it does take a lot of that industrialism out of the people's view. And so anyway, to get down to what I really want to talk about is I gave everybody a copy of this. This was in 2017 was a study that was done in California on all the emissions for non-conventional wells and stuff. And it shows all the distances that are safe distances. Besides that, to follow that up, there was a Delphi study, which went over the same material, came up with the same information. And then I found on Colorado Public Radio's website, they have everything you need to know about Colorado's new health study. And this health study was published October 18th of 2019. So it's really, it actually has the 380-page document that you can actually look at right there. And so when you look at all these things, first of all, you know, what they're showing is they're showing low birth rate in these communities if you're too close. They're showing that the children are small for the gestation periods that they've been in the womb. They're showing up that they have skin diseases or skin allergies. They're showing up with respiratory things. The majority of these reports are far over 1,000 feet. A lot of them are a quarter mile or more, and most of these are a half mile. You know, I personally feel that a half mile is an acceptable limit from these things. They don't have the research either to say that 12 people in this community were sick. Some of the other documents that were printed, most of the people are mixed. So here again, it's both sides. But so first of all, if it's 500 feet to a residential and 1,000 feet to a school, well, that kind of makes sense because we want to protect the school. But what about the kids in my backyard? What about my pets? You know, if they're in more danger at 500 feet than 1,000, it certainly should start at 1,000 feet and go up. You know, All I know is that it should be quite a ways away. You also have to think that we have 1, 2, possibly 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 well pads in this town, and that concentrates all those pollutants. This really long 380-page document will show you how they did take into consideration the wind blowing and how long it lasts, et cetera, et cetera. But I guess my final question for the whole thing is, how close do you want your family to live to that? I don't think we need to change the rules for the entire state. We need to change them for only Lock Buoy. And if we can keep the majority of these people out of the center of our town, I'm all for it, because they're just simply killing us, and we're not going to know for 20 years. And, I'll be dead and gone when some of these people have children that have, real learning problems and things like that. So I don't think we know. And I don't think it's wise to get as close as we can. I think these builders and developers have shot themselves in the foot as far as putting, those pads in on their properties. Those oil companies aren't giving them any more money than they would have made if they'd have gone and developed that property themselves. The only thing is, they don't have to do as much work, so that's the last thing I'll say is, how close do you want to live to that, When I open up my back door and they're 500 feet away from me out there, no way. So that's all I have to say, so.
I guess my follow-up to that would be, so where
So
does that position you on?
Okay, my position is, would be that 2,500 feet is the magic number. And I know you've seen that phrase time and time and time again, so that would be my suggestion. And I would like to see this board approve that. Some of that, what's the distance to a power line from an oil well? I thought I saw one place it was 500 feet. Well, does a real oil company really care about you? They're more worried about that power line exploding up their oil field, or you starting a fire that's big enough to cause that explosion. And then when you look at the ring that an exploded oil well, it's huge. It's more than 800 feet, so there'd be dust all over the back of my house.
I've got
I'm hoping we can get some response to the proposal of 2,500 feet.
I've got a list similar to this, and I appreciate you providing that to me. I will make sure that all the trustees receive it. It's 35 different studies, health impact studies. Also looking at, most of them are about setbacks, but also looking at potential impacts to water quality that are relevant. And I'll make sure that they're put into the record, and that you all have a chance, and I'll even include a synopsis of
Yeah, I think that's fair. You've always done the best for this town that I know of, and I just want you to protect our citizens, so.
I absolutely agree, and we can talk a little bit more candidly, in executive session and get into, weighing those different options.
Thank you.
Trustee Doherty?
Follow-up question on the lighting, and because I know it's been brought up before, it was just brought up as well from Trustee Strock regarding making it downward if it's visible. So my main question is, can we really do that? And my one caveat is I don't know who regulates this type of lighting, but I'm going to call it FAA required lighting. That's at the top of like their boom. It's visible, I can see it, and I'm pretty sure the airplanes don't want it to be downward facing, because that'd be problematic. So like, if our regulation says that if it's visible, it has to be downward, I'm pretty sure that probably creates an issue for that. So how do we make that acceptable? Because I'm guessing we all would prefer not having an aircraft hit one of those towers.
So currently the best management practices that I put before you in the draft form, and frankly what has already been passed by Crestone Peak Resources, does require downward lighting. And it is lighting where you will see that there's a light out there, but it's not directing that light directly, hopefully into your room. What they've told me that they'd like to do is, if they get a complaint, they have the person take a picture, text it to them, and they can tell from that picture which light needs to be redirected. So I think that it is safe, and the argument that the industry is going to come up with, and I think it's a fair one, is that they need to have adequate light for them to work all through the night, you know, and to keep their employees safe. And you would argue, well, that just, you know, leads back or more credibility to your argument that it needs to be an industrial area if they're going to be working 24 hours a day, you know, 7 days a week, and need all that light. You know, that is also something that needs to be balanced with what is an appropriate location.
Yeah, I get that. I guess my only caution would be if we do move to more like requiring downward, making sure that it's written in a way that excludes safety lighting. I don't really know what that lighting's called, honestly, but that it should exclude those type of things. So maybe it's, you know, downward work lighting or something along those lines. Or maybe,
Concern is that if certain of the structures are such a height.
well, so like if we write it in a way that just says all visible light must be downward, you know, downward projecting, the light at the tower of the boom shouldn't and can't. So if we write it that way that says it must, well then how those two don't jive.
Well, I think we can put some language in there that says FAA regulations requires.
Okay. I wasn't sure who regulated those, so I wasn't sure. But some way to make sure that we're not like saying, hey, even these lights are required to be downward facing, because I don't think that's
The lights that you see are not
No, you're right.
the lights that are directed downward. They're, you know, typically a red light, you know, that is serving a different purpose, and that is to notify airplanes and not to direct light.
right. Absolutely. Okay.
You know, it's a great point that Grant has made. You know, they do have the red lights on top of their towers and the white. Some of them have the flashing white and all that. They put up those fences to keep the lights down during construction and all that. A lot of times when they're done and everything's moved out, and the last 2 weeks of their production or before they finish up things, they have lights that are coming across those fields all night long. And they're not necessary. They're not up in the air either. They're just a nuisance. But Trustee Doherty's completely right. The safety lights need to be on top of the things. I also like to say that the oil company has gone to great lengths to change some of their lighting. If you notice, a lot of it's been changed on the rigs, you know, to where it is more beneficial for them and better for the people outside. So they've done a lot of work on that. But, you know, they certainly have to have lights for safety, you know. But you could argue when they leave them on all day long that that's not efficient either, so.
Okay, well, seeing no more general conversation at this time, I will, Trustee Morris?
Yeah, I think more a comment. I don't think I have a question yet. Maybe one will evolve from this, but I guess first, Mr. Sura, thank you for all your work on this. It's obvious to me that, one, you're our subject matter expert on this oil and gas stuff, and that you've done a lot of work and spent a lot of time on it, and I appreciate that. I think I would like to comment that the proposed revisions in here are designed to strengthen the current provisions to benefit the health and safety of the people, the environment, the water, the air, all of that. I would like to note the proposed process for the permitting. I'm not sure, I don't believe this was in place before, but I like the process of the pre-application conference, staff review, et cetera. I was really struck with the provision in there about staff having the ability to, if I'm reading correctly, essentially reject the proposed site and say, no, this will not work for us, come back with other options, the alternative locations to be looked at and evaluated, and then following that process, staff being able to say, yes, that works, no, that doesn't, and now being able to recommend denial of a permit, where before COGCC would approve it and then we'd basically get it thrust upon us and, you know, we could take it and whatever. Now we at least have the ability to have a say in what happens. There was also language about that they are strongly recommended or advised to seek our permitting process, and I know I'm slaughtering the words on this, but instead of just coming to us after COGC permit, now they're advised or encouraged to work that out with us first. I really like the proposals and the revisions that's been presented. I like the best management practice document and the things that are on there. That appears to be significantly above and beyond what we had to work with in the past. I guess a comment from my perspective about the 1,000-foot setback versus the 2,500. 1,000 feet is greater than the current 500-foot setback that's mandated. And I believe that was Senate Bill 181 that increased it, if I'm not mistaken. I would love to keep oil and gas development, exploration, extraction as far away as possible. I worry that stipulating a 2,500-foot setback would chill that industry or any efforts at all. To me, it seems the workaround is that in that permitting process, the parties can sit down at the table and say, yes, this site works, or no, it doesn't, here's a better one, and then it could be, worked out as responsible people at the table. I guess final comment is, Mr. Sura, I'm impressed with the work that's been done, and I feel that this is some substantial improvements on what we've had to work with. Period.
Hunterman?
Just one quick question. The proposed changes to Lac Bouilly's regulations, on that page 9, the process, number 1, it says a pre-application conference. Who is that held with? Who is involved in that conference? Pardon?
Our town staff and Matt Zura, any other technical advisors.
Are you involved in that conference?
Whoever the town wants to have in that meeting would attend that conference. The applicant typically comes in and, is going to have a number of their experts, both on land use and some of these best management practices as well.
So in the past, I've attended those. We've had our planning consultant attend, Matt's attended. We've had our consulting engineer attend, and it's also our traffic engineer. So we've had a team that's attended those pre-app meetings.
That's what I was asking. Thank you.
Okay, so now, seeing no more general conversation at this time, I would just say I echo everything Trustee Morris said was all my thoughts. So I will entertain a motion for executive session to discuss any legal questions stemming from this presentation.
Move into executive session to receive legal advice on specific legal questions pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 24-6-402, paren 4, paren B, specifically to answer legal questions concerning local authority to regulate oil and gas development within the town with Town Oil and Gas Council.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Ott.
Yes.
Trustee Counterman.
Yes.
Trustee Strock.
Yes.
Trustee Jeffrey.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And the motion to go into executive session carries 7-0.
Turn off the live streaming, just stay in here.
Hard to put it back on. That's what I was about to ask.
I will have to stop the session and start a new one. So we will have 2 live streaming sessions for this day. If you are going to leave the room, I put the executive session slide.
So if someone comes on it, it'll show.
It's just gonna show that slide, right? And as long as all mics are off, it'll just sit there.
So they're not quite ready about that application conference, right? I mean, it's not a staff decision.
to all of us. 'Cause they,
Because they've offered it before, yeah.
yeah, it's supposed to be.
This one is asking for Steve's signature.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I meant to set that on his desk, it's that task order thing. And I guess that resolution, this one will have to change those 4 words. That'll say every sign.
Can't I just?
I think she was gonna add me.
No, May's already in there. That's what she was saying.
The nice thing about it is, you still sign it, I guess, and she can fix it on
Just May's, yeah.
It's a big one there.
Almost everyone. Everyone? No, person to your right. No. Is that the back now?
Yeah, it's hands on.
We'll wait a couple minutes for trustee.
Upside down.
Bless you.
And now we lost Lynn. We'll wait one more moment. And I can finish signing everything anyway.
What did it say? Oil and gas best practices, keep driving? Just keep on
Could
going.
be our new.
Drive on through.
If I need to sign anything. Email language anyway. Okay. The time is now, we're good? Okay. The time is now 9 PM, and the executive session has been concluded. For the record, if any person who participated in our session believes that that any substantial discussion of any matters not included in the motion to go into executive session occurred during the executive session, or that any improper action occurred during the executive session in violation of the open meetings law, I ask that you state your concerns now. Seeing none, the next item on our agenda is discussion item Part 2A, continued discussion of the ordinances relating to, the ordinance and resolution relating to oil and gas. Is there any further discussion at this time? Seeing none, that will come back for final action at our second meeting in February 18th. Okay, next item on the agenda is discussion item 2B, home rule. Trustee Ott.
I would like to get this back on the agenda again. I don't think we had enough time last fall to get it through. So, enough advanced lead time, I think we could get the people we need to get the commission done, or the committee done, and get it going. Because I have 2 people lined up, possibly 3 already. So I just think we need more time. We put on the November ballot. We can start next month or, the end of this month and getting it going, and getting on the ballot.
Is there anyone opposed to trying again this year what we tried this year? Or trying again this year what we tried last year? Which is getting a commission put together for the November ballot. How much time did you have last year?
3 months. We cut it pretty close. I don't think we did it anything till June or July.
Check the statute, but part of that is you can't call the election too much in advance either, right? Like, it may be a 6-month. But I mean, if you're gonna do it, you can start recruiting now, sure.
I'm not seeing any objection, so everyone is cool with us charting a course as if we are going to put that on the November 20 ballot? Yes. Okay. You have your go-ahead. Next item, discussion item discussion item C2, which is events dates. Okay, so now that we finally have everyone on the board here at a meeting, first thing I'll do is point out Linda gave us a 2020 board meeting calendar, so it has all of our meetings on it. The big thing I did want to point out is in November, you'll notice we have no official meetings, and that is for a reason. The first is November 3rd is election night, and consistent with tradition, we're not going to have a meeting that night. The second meeting, November 17th, is currently scheduled as a budget work session. The reason for that, and it might become an official board meeting, but the reason it is just listed as a work session right now is the past 2 elections, the Weld County Clerk and Recorder has taken like 3 weeks to certify election results. And Linda and I and Steve's concern was if we tried to have an official meeting that night, we might not be able to because we might not know who's officially representing us at that point. So our kind of concept was at that November 17th meeting, all of the current members of the board and any people that are likely to take a seat based on the election results will be there for the budget work session. We can all participate and put our input in and then give whatever direction needs to be had. And then the December 1st meeting will be when the new board is officially seated. Is everyone okay with that? Does that make sense to everyone?
Makes sense.
Okay. So dates for events. When we last talked about the ice cream socials, everyone was kind of on board with the idea of maybe spreading them out over more time and doing one a month in the 4 different neighborhoods in town. Is that still what everyone wants to do? And do we have any proposed dates or dates that are particularly bad, anyone from May to August? Because kind of tentatively what I was thinking is maybe we would do the last Saturday in each of those months for an ice cream social. So the May 30th, June 27th, July 25th, and August 29th. And we can figure out the neighborhoods later, whichever makes most sense for each of us.
Labor Day's on the 1st,
Labor Day is, no, the 7th.
the 7th, okay.
Yep. Does that tentatively work for everyone? Okay, we will move forward with that concept.
27th.
Yep, go ahead.
What time do you think we'll do those?
Good question. What does everyone think worked best this year? Afternoon?
I think so, like,
Yeah, because mostly, they have kids on soccer games in the morning, or baseball or something, like that.
2 o'clock. So like 2 p.m.?
2 o'clock, yeah.
2 p.m.?
2 o'clock.
2 to 4 or?
I think we talked about shrinking them to an
1
hour.
hour?
Yeah.
Then I would say 3 to 4.
Anyone have different? Let's plan on each of those being 3 to 4 p.m. The next ones we had to figure out were our Oasis nights, and we had tentatively talked about doing 2 this year. I was thinking we keep August 8th if we can get it, because I assume that's probably going to be the Saturday before school starts. I'm looking at Jamie to see if she has any insider knowledge.
Let me bring up the calendar, give me just a second.
What are the?
Because it's a little different this year.
What are the restrictions?
Don't know yet. I think we'll be the first ones booking, at least based on my conversations with the Brighton lady.
So are you gonna take the ice cream from the end of July to the Oasis? What's left over?
Yeah, if there's leftover, yeah. Or get more.
Or are you gonna do ice cream again at the Oasis?
I don't see why not.
I thought that was a big hit. you
Yeah.
know?
I also think, though, if they would open the concession stand, they would get quite a bit of business.
I don't know if they'll do that because that's a staffing issue is what we got
Sure.
told this year, but maybe we could do it this year so we have a little more time to plan.
Mm-hmm.
She mentioned we could do a food truck or something.
Yeah.
Would you say a food truck?
Yeah. I'm sorry. The first day of school is August 18th.
Maybe August 15th for one of our Oasis nights? It seemed like that Saturday right before school was a big hit.
Yeah, because I believe the fair will be like the 7th, 8th, 9th, Southeast Weld County, which impacts some people in our.
So it's on the 15th.
Yep. Well, hopefully. This is the dates we're going to propose to Brighton and see if there's. That'll be our second one, and I was thinking the first one sometime in June, maybe the 13th. If I'm seeing no objections.
I guess maybe what's the last day of school? Maybe doing it like the Saturday after. So like doing the 23rd.
Won't do that. I think that's the first weekend they're open. Yeah, I think that's the weekend they open.
Too cold.
Good thought, but.
Maybe May 30th? Oh, that's with the,
Well, we could do the 30th and do it the same day as an ice cream social. Is that a huge issue? And then it's.
What are we
right when
doing?
School's closed. It's kind of the start of summer.
So the proposal is May 30th and do it the same day as one of our socials. Is everyone cool with that?
What? What are we doing on?
The second Oasis night.
Oh, okay.
First, yeah. Okay, I like that. Yep.
potentially, yes.
Assuming Brighton says okay. So that's all of our.
Well, that's just Colorado.
Roll the dice.
Here we'll have still in June, not up here.
No cold and rainy because they're going to be working on County Road 2 at that point, Steve.
Done.
So that's our, we'll see what we can do with the Oasis nights. That's all of our socials are scheduled. Fall Fest, did Linda have thoughts on this?
I don't know. I mean, I was gonna say maybe depending on the school night. I do know that the school had theirs the night before ours, but I think we still had a pretty good turnout. But I know that May and Amber were a little concerned that they were so close together that maybe most people wouldn't go out both nights and just one night. So that might. So I don't know if you have a. I'm sure they don't have their time fixed or
That was
picked
a
already.
PTA thing, I think.
Yeah. That was their carnival.
I was thinking we could tentatively say September 26th, and maybe we start there and change it if we have to.
What was the last one? Do you remember?
Earlier, we were like the second week in September, I thought, or third week.
Yeah, but Labor
A
Day was
little
earlier this year.
cooler.
We did our community day on September 28th.
Oh,
Yeah, I
yeah,
was
'cause it was
thinking
right
we
before
did
my
it
baby was
right.
born, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe you're right. I just don't want, you wouldn't want to go to where it's too cool potentially.
Let's just tentatively that, we can work from there, maybe if we need to. 6th, yeah, 26th.
26.
And then the last couple of things. State of the town address on March 31st. Does that work for everyone? Seeing no objection.
Gotta give
March
us
when?
time to look at our calendar.
What's on this?
Now I'm going fast.
Should be
31st,
fine.
state of the town? Here? Like at 6:30 in the evening here?
Yeah, those are 6.
You and me again.
Yeah. No, Dave wasn't there.
What time?
Yeah, Mike was here. 6 p.m.? Yeah. We live streamed. I'm sure someone watched.
Your wife?
Yeah. No, she didn't. She read it. And then I think the last thing I was, 2 more. First budget retreat. I think we did that at the end of September this year. Is that right? The budget retreat?
We did, and we might do budget a little bit different this year, and so I'm working with Denise to get kind of a new budget calendar and schedule. We'll probably be able to start a little bit early in doing some of the forecasts and stuff for this next year's budget.
But do you just want to wait on scheduling?
And
that?
we'll set a calendar up, but it'll be the one thing I would like to set, maybe have it on you, if we're going to have any second board retreat this spring to talk about kind of priorities for 2021. I don't have a date yet, but we probably should do it in
We could do that. but then-
Time-wise, that's about the right place for it.
Does that work for everyone? Yeah. So. Mhm. Why?
In case you have a ton of people show up or whatever. Well,
Stop being a dick.
I'm being serious. We end up having a ton of people that show up for that.
Okay.
You want to push that till 9 to start?
No. We'll say, so March 31st is going to be State of the Town and the budget, or the board retreat.
So you guys will have dinner?
Yeah. Yep. And
I
then
mean,
la-
I don't know about everybody else, but like, could we start at 5?
No. Normally I would say yes, but that's the last day of the month, which is awful for me at work. And then the last one was holiday party. I was gonna say December 11th.
Let's not do the same place we did. Let's try the new Texas Road.
We can figure out where later, but let's say December 11th. That's generally the Friday we've been working with. Cool. Did everyone get all those dates?
No.
Well, I'll send an email, or Linda will. I'll forward her my list too.
Update this cute little calendar and give it again.
That's what I did. Yeah. So yeah. So here's what we'll do. I'll send Linda or communicate with her and make sure we had all the dates coordinated. She'll update this calendar and send it out, and can you print a copy for next meeting too? Cool. Okay. Next item on the agenda, discussion item. Yeah.
Actually about the election thing. So in our town ordinances, were we ever running into an issue with that?
Well, this was part of the conversation. We have to seat at the first meeting after the election results are certified, right? So that's why if they are certified before the 17th, we're going to have a meeting that night.
So, okay, so but I guess my question is, do we have an ordinance that says what a term is?
You hold your office until the next police.
Okay, so it's not like, we didn't set it, it says like it's 2 years and 5 days and we're gonna run over that, so we don't have a mayor or whatever for 5 days. We're cut, okay. I just didn't know if we
You
had
hold office
something.
until you're replaced.
Okay, I just wanna make sure.
And I mean, I know mayor, are there other?
They're up for election. Gary's position, Mike's position, Larry's position, my position.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, next item is discussion item D2. The Weld Chamber, or the Southeast Weld Chamber banquet invite. They sent us an invite to their annual banquet. I think at least Dave has gone in years past. It was mostly just a check-in to see who wanted to go and how many tickets we should get. So if you're planning to attend on behalf of the town, if you know now, let Linda know at the end of the meeting. If you don't know now and you think you can look tonight, please let Linda know as soon as possible so we can figure out how many seats we need to get.
What was the date?
Saturday, February 1st. I want to go.
I'll be there too, Linda. Anyone else? Dave's going? Larry?
I don't know yet.
Don't know yet. And Gary? You'll be there? So, Gary. And Larry's a maybe.
When is the banquet? When is the banquet?
2-1. Okay, and the next item on our agenda is Mayor Trustee comments. Trustee Connerman.
No comments.
Oh. That's not on here.
I know, we met, that's, yeah.
Totally thrown everything off. Mr. Stamey.
Just real brief. So I did get a text back from Chief. He said that the drive time is included in the Keensburg hours. Thank you. Just a couple of quick updates. We mentioned the waters. We'll have our water planning team here and talk about priorities really for the water projects, the $3 million CIP work we had, and, and then talk about all the other CIP projects in water, set the priorities, and also some of that maybe the next 5 years. And we're working with the developer of the Lockbuoy Center site as well as the 7-Eleven representatives to get their permit finalized and get that construction started. A couple weeks ago, they said their intent was to start building the week of the 13th, but we still are waiting on their final payment for the subdivision. RICA, we do have their annexation application and package for that, so we've started the review of that. So we'll be proceeding with that annexation application with the board pretty soon. So that's all I had, just for quick updates tonight.
Any update on the Santiago's facility?
They served a staff holiday luncheon here and indicated they're ready to come to town. I think they're doing some work out there. They did their second submittal for their renovation remodel plans. That's being reviewed by Charles Abbott now.
Okay.
Trustee Jeffrey?
I was just curious about our Public Works Operations Manager vacancy. When is that? What's our timeline for replacing that position?
I don't have a timeline yet, but we will be advertising for that and going through the interview and selection process.
Trustee Counterman?
Since we have a new treasurer finance director, are we going to be using David Green Services any longer? Or?
Just to finish up and do the transition work.
Now, Mayor, trustee comments. Trustee Counterman said he didn't have any comments. Trustee Morris?
None.
Trustee Strack?
Boy, I got a lot. So I guess I'll start with the sewer board. I know we've mentioned that, and we're waiting to see it gets seeded over there and all that, but, you know, they're building an awful lot of houses. They're getting ready to develop across from King Supers. And so I kind of wonder about those. I wonder about all the new retail at the Prairie Center, whether they're pumping that waste over to us. And I wondered about the new semi garages that are on the other side of 76 as to whether we're getting their waste also. And with all the things that have happened in Brighton, I just kind of wondered if somehow they or us shouldn't audit the PIFs that have come out of there for the last year or so. That's it. Something else that might be considered at maybe a future point for this board is I think we could actually save some money if the town had a town engineer that worked here 40 or even, you know, part-time. It seems to me we have engineers and inspecting engineers, whereas we could probably cut some of that cost down if we had our own engineer that was adequately trained. Out at Lake Henry would make a really good site. Niwot has a recycle center where they have 3 different bins, and that the people of the town can pull in there and use the recycled bins. And Lake Henry would be really good for that. We could just have a small entrance in those 3 bins, and like I say, Niwot has a really good picture of what we could do on that. Another thing is we should really be considering a bridge out on County Road 6. I understand that at one time there was a bridge out there that may have washed out. I doubt you'd get FRICO to replace it, but at some point we really need a bridge on 6. So that should be in our future. Something else that's going to come up sooner or later, every Dr. Cog meeting, they have a highlight or a profile of a different town. And one of these days, they're going to pick Lockbuoy out of that hat, and we'll be needing to do a 10-minute presentation on what's happening in the town. And I thought that might be a good task for our new assistant administrator. You could learn a lot about the town and a lot about audiovisual. I think that was about it. Vesta, You know, we should approach them at some time too. I saw them taking one of their parts right down for the other day. And I know that they would be interested in helping us with that exchange on the interstate at 4. It'd be to their advantage. Many times you'll see them take their wings, go all the way out to 88th, spend an hour to get across that bridge and come back east on 76. Whereas if they had a straight access down 4, it'd save them so much money. And I would think they would pay for the whole darn thing. That's really about all I have, unless you want to talk about, maybe the town should think about a climate action plan and the footprint that we produce, and start thinking about things like all the electricity money that we spend out at the sewer plant, you know, which could easily be switched over to some other type of energy. I guess that's it, so I will yield.
Mayor Pro Tem Matt?
The only thing I was thinking about is, can I contact the new Texas Roadhouse opens up about having the party there for Christmas?
I think that's usually Linda or Steve handles that, so.
Okay, I'd like to contact them instead of where we've been in the past 4 or 5 years.
We don't know what other options.
Okay, well, new Texas Roadhouse opening. And I know we had one at the,
Open in February, I believe.
at the old, I think they're out of business, the steakhouse that we got in a number of years ago.
Party room though.
Yeah, they had a party room, so I don't know where Texas Roadhouse is gonna have one or not. I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
you guys are gonna do, right?
That's all I have.
Trustee Doherty?
Just get done. I saw on the corner of 50 and County Road 2. You know what's going on there? With the construction fences?
Yeah, they have fences up everywhere.
No, I don't.
Well, it's that gas line that we turned down that CDOT said we couldn't do, that was gonna go down 2. Well, they brought it across 50 down the hill, and they're making that turn coming back this way.
So those construction fences are for that?
Yeah, look behind it, they got the blue pipe out there, and they're all stuck up there to be welded together. It's kind of excessive, wasn't it?
On the south?
Yeah,
West
yeah.
I was just curious if it looked like it was development, so I was curious if that actually raised any.
I'll look and see what it is.
The traffic light, yeah.
I mean, it's not, honestly, as soon as that gets developed, it's probably gonna spike that. Well, that really is necessary, so I was just curious. So if that's only that, then that's all I have.
Trustee Jeffrey?
Happy New Year, y'all.
Y'all.
2 other things, Jacob.
Trustee Strack? Couple
2
more.
things I forgot. One, it's kind of a sad thing, but it's quite possible that within the next 6 months, we'll lose our senior center. They'll be closing it up. They can no longer afford to run it. And also, I would like to, it's okay with the board, I'd like to maybe go to a Hudson town meeting and ask them how they feel about their fire impact fee. Driving through there, it's, you know, their residential building really isn't much to talk about, so
I mean,
they could sure use the extra money, so that's all. Thank
You are
you.
welcome to attend that as
Citizen.
Larry Strack,
Okay,
citizen,
that's
but
fine.
you can't speak on behalf of the town.
Yeah, that's fine.
Um,
I'm good at that.
And then, okay, I had a couple of quick things. Just to update the board, the library conversations are still progressing forward. We have reached a I think I might have given this update in December, but we reached a tentative agreement with Hudson. It's now sitting with High Plains Library District to see what they'll do with it, and hopefully we'll have some good news in the next couple of months, weeks. I don't know if everyone on the board noticed, but the Antonov sign is no longer yellow and outdated. They have painted it white. So if citizens are still bugging you about it, let them know to look at it because it's now not ugly. Yeah, less ugly. When I reach out to Brighton about the Oasis Nights, I'll also confirm which events we are co-sponsoring with them this year so we can get those on our website. I just wanted to let the board know that. And then the last thing was our follow-up conversation concerning Steve's review is still pending. It is probably going to be the first meeting in February now. Steve needs to have some conversation with some other players that are related to that, that I want to be able to share with the board. So in early February, first meeting in February, we will have that follow-up and some relevant conversations to that. With that, I will entertain a motion.
I move we adjourn.
Motion and a second, all in favor? All opposed? We are adjourned at
I'm gonna stay here.
9:26 PM.